You might think that Radio 1's just a top 40 station. Your local station's a bit bland and boring, and as for Radio 2, well, but at least you can listen to pop music. About 25 years ago, you'd have been lucky to even do that. The BBC played just a few hours of pop every week. There was Saturday Club, there was Pick of the Pops, and not much more. Then in March 1964, 3.5 miles off this beach, a ship anchored. It had a very tall mast.
Wow, here it comes. Here comes the night. Here comes the night. Ooh, yeah.
This is Free Radio, the sounds of Free Radio coming to you from Caroline.
You to me are sweet as roses in the morning, and you to me are soft as summer rain at dawn. In love we share that's something rare. The sidewalks in the street, the concrete and the clay beneath my feet begins to crumble, but love will never die, because we'll see the mountains tumble before we say goodbye.
When you go shopping this morning, don't forget, girls, to buy those cards. Plain white postcards, because tonight, don't forget, we'll be having our love-in as usual, and you never know, we may even send a card to Harold Wilson, because, let's face it, that man must need some love.
They call me Mr. Pitiful. This everybody knows now. They call me Mr. Pitiful. Most every place I go. But nobody seems to understand that. How can a man sing such a sad song? Ooh, when he lost everything. When he lost everything that he had.
I got a letter yesterday, and I opened it up, and I read this letter, and it was from an old lady, a very old lady, and she was on about the Marine Defences Bill, you see. She said, "My dear young man," she said, "would you believe it must be at least 49 years since I committed an offense with a Marine?"
Radio, go, go!
I don't know what it is that makes me love you so. I only know I never wanna let you go. 'Cause you started something, oh can't you see? That ever since we met you had a hold on me. It happens to be true. I only wanna be with you. It doesn't matter where you go or what you do.
5. Even the bad times are good, the tremolos.
4.
Excerpts from Teenage Opera, Keith West.
3.
San Francisco, Scott McKenzie.
2.
I'll Never Fall in Love Again, Tom Jones.
1.
A former public school boy who became one of the best-known pirate DJs, he was one of the few to remain aboard after the pirates became illegal. Later, he reluctantly joined Radio 1, but became disillusioned and went off to work in America. Even there, though, he didn't find the kind of freedom he was looking for, so now he's back in Britain. Who is he? He's
Johnnie Walker.
Somehow I'd always had this feeling of rebelliousness, and I was at a public school, and that was, you know, very strict about what you should do and what you should grow up into being and everything, and it didn't suit me at all. And DJs somehow seemed the ideal thing to do. You were out there on a boat, everybody called it pirate radio. You knew that all of the government was against you, and particularly in '67 when the Labour government were trying really hard to put us off the air, which is interesting now because the Labour Party are courting the youth of the nation, and yet in the '60s, something young people really loved. They moved everything they could to destroy it, which is very sad. So yeah, we had an opportunity of just being young people taking on the whole of the British government. We had a format at that time, which was one in, one out. We had a Caroline Top 50. So one record came from the Top 50, and the next record could be anything you liked. And we had the American Hot 100 in the studio. We had loads of oldie albums. We had a big record library downstairs. So 50% of the music you played, you could choose yourself. I remember the really hard decision was to whether a DJ would stay after August the 15th or not. And I thought about it long and hard, and a lot of DJs were leaving to go and join Radio 1, which started in September '67. And I just decided, I thought, well, if the station's going to be on the air, I want to be a part of it. It really would be like sort of leaving at a really crucial time. It was the total opposite to the freedom of pirate radio, because you knew that you were part of this huge corporation. You broadcast on this massive, great building, 8 floors high, full of executives, all with little monitors in their offices, all able to tune you in at any time. If you said something a bit offensive politically, MPs could demand transcripts of the program, and you were hauled and carpeted up before the boss, and records had to be timed, and I mean, it was just totally different.
Like Johnnie Walker, most of the pirate DJs were white, male and middle class. Unlike him, they crossed over painlessly to the BBC and became dominant figures in pop music broadcasting.
I wanted to become a singer, which I still do, and I thought by going out there and becoming a disc jockey, I would probably get asked to make a record, which would happen, but I found that I enjoyed talking nonsense more. And that's something I've been doing all over the years. So I was out there really because I was 21 years old and I was having fun.
Wonderful Radio London. Whoopee.
I felt we were pioneers because up until then we just had the BBC Light programme and you know, the Northern Dance Orchestra and time checks every 10 minutes. You know, this is the BBC. You'll listen to this because it's damn good for you. And we had pop music for 3/4 of an hour every day. So I didn't feel we were pirates. I felt, in fact, we weren't, because we weren't doing anything illegal because we were outside the jurisdiction of this country. But at the same time, I thought we were pioneers, and I thought this was the start of something very special, which it was.
Well, if you're feeling down, come on and get happy. With wonderful Radio London.
On Radio London, which to me was the best station we've ever had in this country, the pirate ship now I'm talking about, what we had there was the Top 40 playlist, an American system with the high-powered American jingles, and we just played American Top 40 radio, which is rotating hit records, which I still do to this day. I still work to that system because it's the best, and it's the only sensible system that you can work for.
Here's the latest weather word on wonderful Radio London.
I remember going for my first job on the Light programme, it was, because that was my tryout for opening up Radio 1. And I remember the producer there, a fellow called Dennis Jones, he said, we're going to rehearse the programme, and we're going to do tops and tails. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, you tell me what you're going to say into the record and what you say. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to say. He said, but you must know what you're going to say. And I said, no, I don't. I have certain jokes, very funny jokes that I'm going to tell. As has always been the case, they didn't turn out to be that hilarious, but I didn't know, and I still don't know. I've got the basic format to the show, and so he said, well, we'll scrap the idea of rehearsals, and then what we'll do, we'll just sit around and have a chat until 12 o'clock comes, or 12:15 as it was.
The Tony Blackburn Show. Let's go!
And I think the BBC were very good and very sensible to take on the pirate disc jockeys, and they allowed us to show them how to do it at the time. Kenny, Everett and I, we designed the studios for them, and we taught them really how to do it because they weren't aware.
Tony Blackburn Show.
Makes the week go fast, makes the weekend last and last.
It had to be a watered-down version of the pirate ships because, first of all, we couldn't play records one after another, as the pirate ships could do, because of these ridiculous restrictions that we still have here. Secondly, we had, intermingled with the disc jockeys, we had some of the older disc jockeys who'd been with the BBC for quite a long time, so they were still with us. I mean, they were very good. I mean, I've got great admiration for people like Pete Murray and dear old Alan Freeman and people like that, who's still the best at what they're doing. But they were with us as well, so it was a different type of station. And within the restrictions it had, I thought it did very well. Very, very well, considering that it had to link up with Radio 2, and so it was trying to be all things to all people.
Watching flowers in the rain, feel the power of the rain, making the garden grow. I'm just sitting, watching flowers in the rain, feel the power of the rain, keeping me good.
I'll send away all my false pride, and I'll forsake all of my lies. Yes, I'll be as true can be, if you'll come and stay with me. Lovers of the past I'll leave behind. There'll never be another on my mind. I'll do all I can so you feel free, if you'll come and stay with me.
I had my radios in the darkroom tuned to various frequencies which not many people knew about, and if I heard anything coded on these particular channels, I jumped in my car, went down to Whitstable, jumped on the tender and took photographs of whatever adventure happened to be going on. The DJ's main reason for being out there was to get a lot of airtime. They usually had at least 3 hours a day, if not an awful lot more. When I got stranded on Radio City, there were only one engineer and one disc jockey out there. So for a fortnight I became a disc jockey. They were only too grateful to have anybody take over, because there just weren't enough people to do it. It was outside the rule of law at the time, or it seemed like it, and guns came into it, and people just dropping Molotov cocktails off the towers onto boats that might have taken them over. It was a question of territory outside the rule of law.
Screaming Lord Such started one of the first pirate stations here on shivering sands. He soon sold it to his manager, Reg Calvert, who established Radio City, the Tower of Power, on it. On June 20th, 1966, a gang boarded the fort and silenced the station. This was the first in a series of dramatic events, which eventually led to the shooting of Reg Calvert in a Suffolk farmhouse and the arrest of Major Oliver Smedley, backer of a rival station and a prominent member of the Liberal Party, on a charge of murder. These real acts of piracy turned the spotlight away from the DJs and the music and on to the men who were putting up the money. It was bad publicity for the pirates. The government's hostility to them didn't look so unreasonable after all.
I'm putting up all the finance for this.
How much?
Well, it exceeds 5,000 at the overhaul cost. We haven't actually spent this amount yet, but this will cost at least.
And how long do you think that sort of money will keep you going?
Well, until we get some more financial backing, but we don't intend taking on any cheap commercials, cigarettes or pop or anything like this.
Screaming Lord Such wasn't a typical pirate businessman.
Alan Crawford, 42-year-old Australian music publisher, is the boss behind this outfit. On his board of directors, you'll find such important citizens as Oliver Smedley, well-known liberal and businessman with interests in city press newspapers. Major G.C. Lomax, publisher and Lloyd's underwriter. And F.B. Broadrib, financial director to a well-known company.
It is not cheap to run a radio station at sea. It's a very expensive operation. Keeping a ship of this size at sea, manned all the time with a crew of 30, is an expensive way to run a radio station.
Latest in the field, Radio London. Potential radius 250 miles. Potential audience 37 million. Location 1 mile east of Caroline, backed by American and British money to the tune of $500,000. Advertising contracts for 200,000 in the bag after only 2 weeks.
Wonderful Radio London. Olé!
The pirates enjoyed a romantic image and promised hard profits. Attracted by this powerful combination, businessmen from the pop world to the city were drawn to pirate radio. Fishing fleet owner Roy Bates saw a lucrative future ahead for his Radio Essex.
Do you think there is a vast untapped advertisers' revenue waiting? I mean, is there...
Oh, yes.
I mean, have you got a license to print your own banknotes at a station like this?
No, it's not as easy as that. But every day, every week, every month, more and more business people and more businesses are becoming educated to use commercial radio. And this is as it should be.
Surname?
O'Reilly.
Christian name?
Ronan.
Age?
27.
Nationality?
Irish.
Religion?
Roman Catholic.
Occupation?
Marine broadcaster.
Political views?
I suppose I'm an anarchist. I believe totally and completely in giving to people what they feel they want. Nothing to do with what I feel or what a government official feels is good for them or they should be listening to.
The profits are not quick and they're not easy in this operation. The return on capital will take a number of years. It's a good investment, though, Radio Caroline.
Love the music of Radio Caroline.
I mean, it put rock and roll firmly in the middle of the, it was like heavy-duty, mainline music in England, not a little thing that is allowed over here on the side. It's like main event time. It's like all day, every day, 24 hours a day.
Going back in time on the sounds of the nation, it's the Caroline Flashback.
And then suddenly to leave, this naughty, naughty, children must not be playing, back to school, back to work. This, everybody's having too good a time. The good old Puritan vibe came through, and they put enormous time and effort into passing that Marine Offences Act. I mean, when you think of the sheer waste, right, through that act, the sheer, the sort of, how to put it, I mean, how the fun and enjoyment of millions of people all over Europe they were getting from all the different stations. And just to think that doing absolutely no harm to anybody.
They're stealing the copyright and paying no money for it. They're playing records that musicians have recorded and giving them no money for it. They're endangering the ship-to-shore radio, and there's a real risk that distress at sea might not be reported because of the inadequate fumbling handling of equipment. The pirates are a menace, and I don't believe at all that the public wouldn't support action to enforce the law in the interests of all these people whom I've mentioned, quite aside from interference in other countries.
If there is a case for audible wallpaper, it's not a case for local commercial sound broadcasting, because by definition, audible wallpaper, continual pop music, is a national and not a local thing. The pirates hope to force us into licensing, or hope to force some government into licensing commercial sound broadcasting locally, but I don't think it's got anything to do with the audible wallpaper, continuous pop music thing at all. If you're going to make sense out of broadcasting, which is by definition international, you've really got to have some international rules that apply. Within a decade, it'll be possible for satellites in orbit around the world to beam television straight into people's homes. Now, the problems associated with this are enormous. On the other end of the scale, you've got the so-called microbug, where you've got little transmitters that are capable of doing a great nuisance, which are so small it's very difficult to police these for a different reason. And I think all governments, and the United Nations as a whole, has got to take a fresh look at the control of broadcasting in the public interest, because if the whole thing breaks down, the people who will suffer will be ordinary viewers who find there's no security on the wavelengths from the stations that they use.
Try to see it my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go on? While you see it your way, run a risk of knowing that our love may soon be gone. We can work it out. We can work
We can work it out and get it straight or say goodnight. We can work it out. We can work it out. Life is very short and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend.
To replace the pirates, Benn proposed a national broadcasting corporation, separate from the BBC and partly funded by advertising. The cabinet rejected his proposal, the pirates were made illegal, and the BBC was asked to provide a new pop music service. So, a real opportunity to reform British broadcasting was missed. Perhaps unfairly, one of the chief things that the Labour government of the late 1960s is now remembered for is the Marine Offences Act, giving them a killjoy reputation that has proved hard to shrug off.
This is your radio station. This is Radio Caroline. It is now 12 midnight. And as we enter this new phase in our broadcasting history, you naturally have our assurance that we intend to stay on the air because we belong to you and we love you. Caroline continues.
The seas are rough and cruel, life is hard, but as each day passes, the moment of triumph grows nearer. The British people rally round. They send food, they send comfort, and they send their love. All you need is love, and love overcomes. The British government relents. Caroline raises her anchor and heads for England. See her now majestically and proudly sailing up the river toward the capital that has welcomed so many victors in British history. But none as victorious as these men. They stand on the deck waving to the millions of people who line the Thames. This time the tears flooding from their eyes are tears of happiness. The insurmountable odds have been surmounted. They reunite with their families, with their friends, with their loved ones. We are near the end of our story. London's skyline has a new landmark pointed toward the heavens. Caroline's Ariel. At last beaming out its love and music to a free and peaceful nation. We have overcome. The battle is over. Free radio becomes a way of life, but never taken for granted. For no man will ever forget Monday, August the 14th, 1967.